As regards the latest Middle East war, we should keep calm and keep out. By keeping calm, I mean not helping either side, not touching the whole thing with a barge pole. What we need to do is to get ready for, or the main lesson from it at home is that we need to prepare for mass repatriations. There is no other way out of the problems we have, and the reaction to this latest war is highlighting that. And the reaction to it is also showing, I think, some signs of hope, some small cracks in the ice which indicate that there is change, quite substantial change beneath the ice going along. Okay, what about the Palestinians, the poor Palestinians? Should we be helping them? Absolutely no way on earth. I think that what they did was a massacre and a war crime in Israel. I think roughly 1,200 civilians killed, shot in a pretty vicious way. I think this was a vicious massacre. Another about 200 kidnapped and taken into Gaza. The reason I think that's a war crime is you basically have the Gaza state going in and deliberately planning to kill, to wipe out very large numbers of civilians, non-combatants. That's a war crime in anyone's book, and I think the number means that it's a massacre. And the idea that this is a tiny minority of unrepresentative extremists, God, I wish people would stop saying that. That you even see people saying that about the Palestinians now. Only a tiny minority support Hamas. No, Hamas were voted into power last time. There was a vote, in 2006, and it was about 45% they got. Today's support for Hamas amongst Palestinians is about 55%. So it's the majority and rising. Now, I would say that Israel has the right to exist insofar as you can talk about rights within that area, within basically the Arab Muslim world. There's a clever little or smart aleck little legal quip in the UK, in our country, which is that possession is 9/10 of the law. Well, out there, I would say possession is 10/10, probably 11/10 of the law. If you've got your hands on something, you can do what you like with it, and you have power and to hell with anyone else and get stuffed. That land has been contested. It's kind of seldom been owned. The Ottomans had a kind of land registry which they closed down. It was mainly people by nomadic tribes. Can you talk about ownership? I'm not sure you can. I think there was simple possession. If you possessed it, you were the boss. That is the Islamic mentality. That's the mentality that prevailed. Plenty of different people have owned that patch of land for 75 years. Israel has had it. They've got it now. That means Israel exists. I think that means Israel has the right to continue to exist. That means it has the right to defend itself. And there is no duty of proportionality in law. That's a silly, sentimental load of nonsense imported from a European law, European administrative law. What you do have, what you certainly always had in British law, is a duty to do your reasonable best to avoid unnecessary civilian casualties in pursuing your reasonable military aims. And that's actually quite difficult to judge what your reasonable military aims are. It can go quite far. Just to give you an extreme example, one of the best things that I think we did in World War II, Britain and America, was Britain to carpet bomb some of the towns in Germany. One or two of them, they weren't reduced to rubble. They seem to have been reduced more or less to brick dust. And the Americans doing the same, creating firestorms in Japan. And the reason that was so good is because it shoved those two nations through the sausage making machine and processed them from very bellicose militaristic nations with two of the worst armies in history, the Waffen-SS and the Japanese Imperial Army. I think the Japanese Imperial Army was probably the worst. And it processed them into highly peaceful states. After 1945, they wanted nothing to do with war. They didn't want an army. They didn't want any involvement in foreign military campaigns. And it worked, and that was part of the reasoning of the air chiefs and bomber command when they were working out, should we bomb this or that city in Germany, was this feeling, we have to teach you a lesson, Germany. You can't keep doing doing this, and it appears to have worked. That's not just my prejudice speaking, that's historical research. Richard Overy, a historian from Exeter University, he's written about this. I think that there's a YouTube video where he discusses it, that is the effect of mass civilian bombing. It burns the militarism out of the recipient nation. It certainly did with Germany and Japan, and that is a blessing. That is why we've been able to live in peace since then. So I think that was a legitimate military aim, and that was in Germany. 500,000 civilians, mainly women and children and old men, being crushed, baked, and incinerated and immolated in their homes and in the streets. Not nice, but I think that turns out to have been a legitimate military aim. Now, I'm not saying that because I think Israel should do that. I don't think it should. Well, the reason I don't think you can just apply that to the Palestinians is that we recognise that Germans were capable of becoming a civilised people, and that Nazi militarism was not in the nature of being German. Whereas I don't think that Muslim people are capable of being processed into civilised peoples. I don't think that they can be civilised. And I do think that jihad militarism is in the nature of being a Muslim. So I just don't think it would work to carry out that kind of carpet bombing on the Muslims of Gaza or the West Bank. I don't think Israel should do that. The reason I cite that extreme example of the bombing of Germany and Japan is to show how difficult it is to judge what is a reasonable military aim and when civilian deaths are avoidable and when they're not. So the bottom line is, I don't think we need to judge that. I don't think it's necessary for us to get involved. I don't think there's anything we can add. I don't think there's anything very helpful we can do. And I certainly don't think there's either side is going to thank us for a moment. I do think it's quite likely that Israel will overreact, perhaps pretty badly. But again, we have no influence over that. It doesn't involve us. We should stay out of that. The problem is how to judge it. What does Israel do? There's a video that, or a discussion that Peter Hitchens did. If I just show you there, hold on. If I do this. That's him. Every building that's bombed is a recruiting sergeant for Hamas, and I think he's probably right. But on the other hand, if Israel doesn't go in, if Israel had stood back and taken it, I think that would have created even more recruiting sergeants for Hamas. So it's very difficult for them to judge. What I think is apparent, it is impossible for us to judge whether they have judged it correctly. So I think we're free to stay out of it. I don't think genocide is going to get committed. I think we can just keep out of it, and we should. Again, neither side will thank us. It is not in the nature of Muslim peoples to thank us for such help. We tried to intervene in Somalia when there was a terrible famine and civil war just before at the time of Black Hawk Down, and then shortly after that we tried to rescue and save the Muslims of the Balkans, and shortly after that America got 9/11. So that shows how Muslims thank you. That is in the nature of Islamic doctrine. That's what they do, that's what they want to do. They want you either killed or subjugated and enslaved. Take your pick. So subjugation and enslavement, plus a bit of death, mutilation and death. So it doesn't matter how nice you are, doesn't matter what you do for them, they're commanded either to kill or enslave non-believers like us. So I think it's safe to say they're not going to thank us. All right, now what about Israel? Is Israel likely to thank us? Well, I think no way will Israel thank us. I think we, the British, know that better than anyone else. We have less excuse than anyone else on earth to misunderstand that. And I say that by looking at history. If any country is owed thanks by Israel, it is us. And what I mean by that is, if Chaim Weizmann or Theodor Herzl, let me take the example of Chaim Weizmann, if he can be called the father of Israel, that's the man with the gleam in his eye and the inseminating idea in his head, then we, Britain or the British, can be called the mother of Israel, in that we gestated Israel between World War I and World War II. We didn't just midwife Israel. It could be said that we midwifed the state of Pakistan or Singapore or Kenya, But with Israel, it went a lot further than that. We provided the protective conditions and the encouragement, the institutional conditions, or the institutional encouragement for to incubate and nurture and steadily grow the nation of Israel, the people of Israel, that's the body of Israel, until it could survive independently and create its own state. Now, I mean, you might say that, pursuing that analogy, it's a tortured analogy, but you might say that the birth of Israel then occurred by C-section, but it was the British who gestated the nation of Israel. We did that. There is no way that those numbers would have been allowed to arise within Israel. They would have been massacred by the Arabs by 1920, 1921. They couldn't have got together sufficient numbers to be a viable independent state, able to push away Islamic dominance in that area. And what I want to do is to go through a little bit of history just to show that, because what is so clear is how far we went to try to create the state of Israel. I think the British were motivated by quite a lot of idealism. This idea that Jews around the world needed a homeland in order to be able to escape persecution, and so that Jews then couldn't be squeezed by despots who might just want to get money out of them, because then they would have somewhere to go, a homeland to run to. I think there was a strain of commitment and idealism, and I say that because I think Israel tries to play that down sometimes. What I want to do is if we start, as always, with the Balfour. Hold on. The Balfour Declaration. And what you see there is, I'll just read quickly. His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. So view with favour, and will use their best endeavours. Yeah, their best endeavours. There is a vague phrase, if ever I heard one, to facilitate the achievement of this object. It being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. Okay, so that was in 1917. I go through that because sometimes I think some Israelis have tried to say, well, you were just trying to bribe Jewish opinion around the world to get on your side during World War One. Well, no, I don't think that holds up for a moment. The language was so vague, it would have been really easy to get out of. Imagine if you had a contract to sell me your car, and I included in the contract that I would use my best endeavours to facilitate payment towards you. There's no way you would do that. And all of these commitments, they're always hemmed in by reasonableness requirements. Secondly, this was not a contract, it was a unilateral declaration. Again, if I tell you, hey, if I declare to you, I like you so much, I'm going to give you my car next week, and then next week I say, actually, I've changed my mind, there's nothing you can do about it. You have no right to complain. You can only say, well, why did you promise it? Why did you say it in the first place? Thirdly, we may have had ulterior motives. That doesn't absolve the other side, Israel, of gratitude. To give an example, an analogy, Ronald Reagan, he was a lifeguard in his teens during his summer holidays. When he was asked why, he said he did it because it was a great way to meet girls. He could stand around in a swimming costume and look tough and athletic and macho and save people's lives, and the girls liked it. But he was very proud of the fact that he saved 19 lives, and I'll bet not one of them said, hey, you're not saving my life because you want to save my life. You're saving my life because you want to impress girls. Throw me back in the water. Let me drown. That they wouldn't do that. I'm sure they thanked him profusely for saving their lives. We have not been thanked, and the help we gave was very strong, very significant, much needed. It was all important. The population numbers increased between 1919 and 1923. It was almost double. It went up by 35,000, which is almost doubling the population. That was under British rule, basically prior to the the mandate which was came into place in 2022, the British mandate in Palestine. What we did, the reason we were able to do this, and again why we need to be thanked, is because we effectively cleared the dance floor in the Middle East by pushing over the Ottoman Empire. And that meant that there was a power vacuum that we were able to step into. We liberated the Arabs from the Ottoman Empire, and then we were able to administer a large part of that region. And we did that through a lot of effort and a lot of blood in World War I. I have a slight personal interest in that. In that my granddad was a fighter, a very successful fighter pilot. I like to think he might have been an ace, flying Bristol F2 fighters in World War I, long time ago. And he was at there at the Battle of Megiddo, where the Ottoman, in 1918, where the Ottoman army was culled, mown down like grass by the pursuing F2 fighters. And what that did was to get rid of the Ottomans, and that meant that we could then make good on our promise to use our best endeavours to facilitate the creation of the Jewish national homeland. That was the first thing we did, and we should be thanked for that, because it had such a beneficial effect for Israel. And then what we did next was, at Versailles, we were able to squeeze some of the Arabs to say nice things about Zionism, about about Jewish people going to Israel. So in 1919, we effectively were able to put pressure on Faisal, the Hashemite king, to say that he favoured Zionist objectives, and he made a very fulsome statement saying, yes, it was great, and, quote, "We will wish the Jews a most hearty welcome home." Okay, that's what he said about Jews coming into the Palestine mandate. Only Britain, only we had the authority, hard-fought and hard-won authority, by defeating the Ottomans. We were the only people who had the authority to get Arab rulers to do that. And what we did, Arabs in that Palestine mandate, they opposed Jewish settlement. They didn't agree. They didn't like what King Faisal had said, but we encouraged that Jewish immigration anyway and facilitated Jewish purchase of land. We reopened the land registry, which the Ottomans had closed down. And this had quite an effect on the numbers that came in. I just want to go through some of the numbers so you can see why it was so important, why I can talk about allowing the body of Israel, the nation of Israel, or creating conditions for the nation of Israel to formate. Okay, there we are. If you can see that. In 1922, Muslim citizens nearly 600,000, Christians 73, Jews nearly 84,000, 31, it's 750,000 Muslims, and Jews 174, so it doubled in those 9 years. Then by 1945, the number of Jews had gone up to, the number of Muslims was a million, the number of Jews had gone up to 550,000. So it meant that by the time Britain pulled out, there were enough Jews in there to form a nation, to be independent and to fight off attacks. And that would not have happened without British involvement. And the phrase British involvement certainly understates it. It was crucial British support for Jewish aims in the Palestine mandate. We passed laws that facilitated Jewish migration and restricted Arab expansion to such an extent that the commissioner, General Louis Bois, he called for the Balfour Declaration to be revoked because he said it was creating instability. And he was, as a result, he was soon after that replaced by a non-military civilian commissioner, Sir Herbert Samuel. That was in July 1920. He was an enthusiastic Zionist and the first Jewish person to govern Israel in 2,000 years. And just to give you a flavour of how that was received there, Chaim Weizmann said, and here's a quote, "I was mainly responsible for the appointment of Sir Herbert Samuel to Palestine. There is no one who had more to do with or was more pleased," this sounds like boasting to me, "or was more pleased at the appointment of Sir Herbert Samuel than I. We put him in that position. He is our Samuel." That is Chaim Weizmann. So I said that he was, you might call him the father of Israel. Well, he's definitely talking like it there. The Arabs were fuming about that, and Churchill, he would have none of it. His colonial secretary, he gave him a very firm reply. He responded to Arab complaints by basically saying, "The British government mean to carry out the Balfour Declaration. I have told you so again and again. We intend to bring more Jews in. We do not intend you to be allowed to stop more from coming in." That was in 1921, and as a result of, shortly after that, you had the Jaffa riots, where I think it started by a squabble between two different Jewish groups, but the Arabs then saw it as an opportunity to get in and kill Jews. They killed, the number I read is 47 of them killed by the Arabs, and the Jews then they didn't have sufficient numbers to be able to respond effectively. They didn't have the arms either. So the British, we had to get involved, and we did get involved. We called in the army, called in the air force, and then killed 48 Arabs by suppressing Arab violence. So 47 Jews killed by Arabs, 48 Arabs killed by the British. So that shows that the British, we were very committed on providing essential, not just support, but defence for the growing Jewish population at that time. And afterwards there was an inquiry into those Jaffa riots. It was called the Haycraft Inquiry, and it concluded that the Arab perception of a pro-Jewish bias by amongst the British was a main cause of those riots. And again, Britain responded by reaffirming the Balfour Declaration. And Churchill, shortly after that, he met with Chaim Weizmann again, and Weizmann said, "What's your policy about Jewish immigration and Jewish gun running into the Palestine Mandate?" And he responded, "We don't mind it, but don't speak of it." Basically saying to the Jews in the Palestine Mandate, "We understand you're going to need weapons to defend yourself. Keep doing it, just keep it quiet, and we're not going to do anything about it. We don't mind it." So again, crucial British support. That's why I talk about Britain sort of gestating the nation of Israel at that time. And then following on from that, shortly after that, in 1922, that was the formal start of the British Mandate. So we've been involved from the end of World War I. And 4 years later, the British Mandate starts, and we incorporated the Balfour Declaration word for word within that mandate, even after those Jaffa riots. That shows how strongly we were interpreting the Balfour Declaration. We weren't trying to trim it back. And then part of the terms of the mandate also gave Zionist or Jewish organisations sort of semi-governmental type responsibilities, sort of administrative and consultation responsibilities. Now, I could go on until 1939, when Chamberlain restricted immigration to Palestine because World War II was beginning, and he knew that we were going to need all our soldiers back to defend Britain. Now, my point is that it was this pro-Jewish British control, or the commitment among the British authorities to enable the establishment of a Jewish homeland, a self-standing, independent, self-reliant, viable Jewish nation there that could govern itself. It was that commitment which enabled the nation, which nurtured and formed and grew the body of Israel, which is its people. The Arabs would have wiped them out before they attained anything like critical mass. Easily by 1921, probably before then, the Arabs would simply have killed them, wiped them out, and pushed them out, and prevented a non-dhimmi Jewish population, an independent Jewish population that couldn't be effectively enslaved or overruled by Muslim rule. And the number of Muslims was about 500,000 then, and the number of Jews around that time was probably about 75,000. And I think it's no exaggeration to talk about gestating the body of Israel. Without British support and British protection, there would have been no nation of Israel, and then no state of Israel following on from that. So, what gratitude has been showered on us for this, the biggest help that any country has ever been to Israel, i.e. the nation and the nation on which the country and the state of Israel is based. So how has Israel thanked us for that? Well, I'll tell you what I would expect. The analogy I draw here is a weird analogy, but it's a man called Edward Deming. He's called the godfather of quality management. He tried to sell his ideas in America. No one would listen. So he went to Japan. Toyota Motors loved it. Mr. Toyota loved it, employed him. And that American fella, Deming, he taught Toyota quality management. That made Toyota the world-beating car manufacturer. And as a result, my understanding is if you go into Toyota headquarters, you have a small picture of Mr. Toyota, who began the Toyota car factory, the original Toyota fella, and a small picture of the current chairman, and you have a big picture of Edward Deming, because they are so grateful to him. Again, he went out there because they wouldn't listen to him in America. He went out there because it was his job. He was going to get paid to it. You could say he had selfish motives, but they're very grateful to him. I think along the same lines, if you follow that analogy, I think that the British flag, the Union flag, should have an honoured place in every national building within Israel, given what we did to allow Israel to come into existence. But there has been no such gratitude so far as I can detect. I want to talk about three things just to illustrate this. The first thing is something that you may have heard of, and that is the King David Hotel terror attack. Now there it is, Wikipedia, the King David Hotel bombing. I won't go through it in detail here, but the numbers, the deaths were 91, the numbers injured were 46. That was a big deal, and it was Irgun, the Jewish underground organization, that did it. Now I appreciate that there are two sides to this. What Menachem Begin or members of Irgun or other Zionist underground groups would have said is, I'm sure have said, is no, this was not terrorism. This was part of a war of independence against a colonial oppressor. And the King David Hotel, that was a base for British soldiers. That's why it was a legitimate target. Well, we can go through all those legalistic arguments as long as you like. My point is, that is not how you repay the country which has enabled you to come into existence. Just wouldn't be enough of you in there. You wouldn't have the weapons in there to carry out a terrorist attack like that had it not been for Britain. The British forces, ordinary squaddies, infantry, they are the last people that you should be directing an attack like that upon. So I'm not trying to rake over the King David Hotel attack. What I'm trying to talk about is gratitude. What gratitude have we seen? None. Okay, the second one I want to talk about is the Falklands War. Okay, give me a second. Okay, here is a story from the Times of Israel. If you remember the Falklands War, 1982, a small outpost of Britain. I think there were about 2,000 Falkland Islanders, all of them pretty much to a man wanted to remain part of Britain. The Argentinian military junta invaded and we repelled them. And Israel sold arms to Argentina. This is the Times of Israel. UK opens files on Israeli arms sales to Argentina during Falklands War. So that's classified papers getting revealed. Newly classified British documents have provided details on reported Israeli arms sales to Argentina before and during the United Kingdom's war with Great Britain over the Falkland Islands. I think there should be with Argentina over the Falkland Islands in 1982. A report by the Daily Telegraph said that the Jewish state had provided Buenos Aires with Skyhawk fighter jets, which were used during the conflict to sink 4 British warships, killing dozens of soldiers. And then if I go to this Daily Mail report, that's from 2011, a deep-rooted hatred of the British, how Israelis armed junta in Falklands conflict. Now if I go down, bear with me. According to Israel Lotterstein, a salesman from Larix, Argentina, Begin said, "You've come to talk badly about the British. Is this going to be used to kill the English? Okay, that is the Prime Minister of Israel. Is it going to be used to kill the English? Kadima, go ahead. Dov from up there, that's a friend of former friend of Begin, from up there is going to be happy with the decision. I think Dov was executed by the British under the Mandate. Obviously, it must all be done perfectly. Dov Gruner was a close friend of Begin, who was captured and hanged by the British in April 1947 when Britain administered Palestine. Gruner was a member of the Irgun, etc., and Begin hated the English above all, Mr. Lotterstein said. All had forgotten the British occupation, but not him. Colleague James Weinstein said Mr. Begin had a deep hatred and resentment towards the British. He added he did all that was possible to help Argentina, selling her weapons during the Malvinas conflict. Okay, so I think we can say that is not gratitude. And this is remembered by British soldiers, the Falkland Islands Association and people in the Falklands. What they talk about there is that it wasn't just the jets. There was a lot of spare parts. It was know-how, and I think signals intelligence he sold to Argentina as well. And it estimates that the amount of arms sold was $1 billion. That was a lot of money, and sounds like a lot of money now, but it was certainly an awful lot of money in 1982. So I think it's safe to say that we have experienced nothing but ingratitude for what we did in helping to create the nation and state of Israel. And this, I think, comes through in PR. What I want to talk briefly about here is a lot of Israeli or pro-Israel, or a big piece of pro-Israel PR was this movie here, Exodus. It's a well-made movie, and you can see the part one of it free on YouTube. I don't think part two is there, but it's worth a watch. It's well made. Paul Newman does a good job. But if I just go down here, this is Wikipedia, but I assume it's not fibbing. The movie is often characterized as a Zionist epic. The film has been identified by many commentators as having been enormously influential in stimulating Zionism and support for Israel in the United States. This was 1960 when it was released. And whilst Premier's film softened the anti-British and anti-Arab sentiment of the novel, etc., it goes on. But basically, that's it's a or the Zionist epic. That's what Wikipedia says. And yet, what it? Hold on, let me just do that. What it does is it portrays the British, apart from a few sympathetic exceptions, as routinely bureaucratic, casually anti-Semitic, authoritarian, easily fooled, naive and prejudiced, and ultimately the enemy. That's how we're portrayed in that movie. And what's unfair about it is it depicts events which happen at a boat of Jewish people wanting to go to Palestine, from Cyprus to Palestine, and getting turned away by the British. This was a year after the King David Hotel massacre. So the British were realising things are getting out of hand here. We need to keep order. So we need to do something to restrict numbers coming in. We were losing our grip on that territory. This film, I think, is very... it contains some really rich quotes, things like, "God, don't let my brother die at the end of a British rope." The nerve of that, I think. Or of the Balfour Declaration. You have a sort of what seems to me to be a tokenistic good American woman, not a British woman, who helps out in the camp, the holding camp, as a nurse. How can, she says of the Balfour Declaration to I think a senior military fellow, the sympathetic British military fellow played by Ralph Richardson, how can you promise something and then not deliver it? So that's the message. The Balfour Declaration, we didn't deliver on that. Well, this is the ingratitude is off the charts. Okay, now ingratitude is the stuff of life. I mean, you just have to get used to it. If you don't believe me, try giving up your seat on a train to a woman under 50 these days, and good luck surviving if you can't live with ingratitude, and certainly good luck with being happy. But I think I'll leave it to one of my favourite fellows, Sir Les Patterson, to describe the nature of Israel's ingratitude towards what we did for Israel a century ago. Because I think that level of ingratitude...
Take some fucking doing.
Okay, I couldn't have put that better myself. Now, that doesn't mean that Israel has no right to exist. It just means I find that baffling incapacity for gratitude self-defeating. But again, it doesn't challenge Israel's right to exist, its right to continue to exist, its right to defend itself, and the fact that there is no doctrine of proportionality in war. My point is, you don't do that to a country to whom you owe your existence, as I think Israel does to us. Now, I don't think Israel would do to us anything like what the Muslims would and do intend to do to us non-believers. What it means is we should just stay out. It confirms my view. Neither side is going to thank us. Don't get involved. Don't get embroiled. Don't touch it with a barge pole. We'll get nothing but curses from either side. We have nothing to gain, nothing to contribute. In fact, the more we get involved, the less we will have to contribute. And I think it's pathetic watching Rishi Sunak touting his support around Israel. I don't believe he intends. I don't think he's actually concerned about Israel. I certainly don't think he's concerned about the welfare of Britain in doing that. I think he knows he's going to get defenestrated in a year's time. He'll get thrown out of the window like the contents of Henry VIII's latrine, I reckon. He knows that. He wants to go off. He wants to hop the coop, go to America and make money. And so he's sucking up to America. He's making nice to America so that he can get a nice, lucrative job. He's currying favour there. That's what I think he's doing. I think he's thinking about his future. And, well, it's doing us nothing but harm, which is what he has done during his short tenure. Okay, we should stay out. We're not staying out. Now, I think that still means that, that is not ideal from our point of view. But when you look at the effect it's having on us within our own land, I think there is some good news here. I think that these events they've kind of crystallized something. They're a bit of a forerunner. They've created a hairline crack in the ice, perhaps a small turning point. I notice it in three things. I've been hearing for 20 years people saying, oh, everything's going to change, people aren't going to put up with this, it's all going to blow in another 6 months' time, and it hasn't. Now I'm saying, well, it possibly might be just starting to turn. Now the first thing I notice is that it is revealing far and wide on a big screen. It is revealing just how many thousands or hundreds of thousands there are people taking the excuse to make displays of dominance against us on our streets. I want to play a few examples of this just so you can see what they're doing. They're in London showing just invasion of our streets. Totally unacceptable.
In the concentration camp of Palestine. Jihad!
Okay, that's flying the black flag of war in London streets. It's euphemistically called the ISIS flag. It's not. It's Mohammed's black flag of war, the black raya. And then the next bit is another. I think it's Hizb ut-Tahrir calling for jihad on the streets of London. And the next one is a big mass prayer session outside Downing Street. So I'll just show you that. Okay, that's enough of that. Disgusting. That is not about Israel or Palestine. That is about us. That is about dominance over us. Okay, the second thing I think that it has revealed is the role of the police and law, how that is getting mobilised against us. And I think people are a little bit more aware of this. And tightening up law supposedly to prevent extremist speech, but really to get more power over us. I want to play a short clip of a Met Police Commissioner just to show what he's saying.
On there, people do find upsetting, do find distasteful, and sometimes people give an instinctive view that must be illegal. There is scope to be much sharper in how we deal with extremism in this country. The law was never designed to deal with extremism. We have bodies of law to deal with terrorism, bodies of law to deal with hate crime. We don't have a body of law that deals with extremism.
Okay, there's a body of law to deal with terrorism, body of law to deal with hate crime, but no body of law to deal with extremism. So obviously we need that. This is the purpose, the payload of multiculturalism. Stricter laws, more restrictive laws, in order to get more power over us. Basically to divide and suppress us, to keep us divided and fearful. And that then gives those in power the excuse to enact tighter laws on the pretext, under the pretense that they are defending us. No, we didn't need all these overlapping bodies of vaguely worded laws policing every kind of hate speech before the era of mass immigration. If people came out with what was considered highly offensive, they were usually small numbers, and it didn't do a lot of harm. It was something we could be proud of, that we were responsible. We didn't abuse the freedom very much, which enabled that freedom to flourish. The solution is not to enact more laws. That's like taking ketamine to dull the pain of the symptom of an illness, rather than to cure the illness. If you want to cure the illness, you need to turn the telescope around the other way. We need to deport, to remove the vast hostile foreign populations who are making those mass demonstrations and abusing our freedoms. That is ugly, I agree. You might think it's too big a task. You will probably say that is the tail wagging the dog. You might continue. You're probably going to continue saying that until you can't say it any longer. At some stage, you are going to have to do that. You may prefer simply to keep focusing on the welfare state and sucking the government-cooked, liquidized welfare pizza up your nose tube because it feels so nice. But what you may not realize is the other end of that nose tube doesn't go into your stomach, it goes into your brain, and you'll eventually have to rip it out, particularly when the government pump on the other end is no longer pumping that government welfare liquidized pizza into your head. And that is when I think things will change. In the meantime, I think we're going to have to put up with policemen like this gentleman.
For the moment, anything racist or even close to racism is said. Let me finish. For the moment, anything gets anything close to that, all right, people are going to start getting arrested. It's just a verbal warning to let you know we're all...
Okay, so the English flag is seen as a provocation in England, and people who fly are maybe at risk of being arrested. Tell me that was foreseeable, say, a decade ago. My point is that what is not foreseeable at one time becomes inevitable at another time. And that enhances my argument that what you might think mass deportations shouldn't happen and are unnecessary today, I'm saying they will become necessary. You're going to have to work out how to do it. You're going to have to work out how to do it reasonably humanely. And that is the one thing people are not doing. I've done it repeatedly in videos. I'll continue to do it. I don't have time to do it in this one. Now, the third slight sign of hope that I see is that these protests on our streets seem to have given civic nationalists the permission they need to butch up and be explicit about one or two little things that they wouldn't have said before but now feel able to say. The fact that it's happening to Israel and that it is Jews who are under threat, it seems to give, it lets civic nationalists off the leash. That's a slight change. I think that is a change for the better. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them. I think the one I want to look at is Douglas Murray, because I had said I thought that Lawrence Fox is the gift that keeps on giving. Actually, since he got chucked off the telly, I think it's Douglas Murray. I think he's the gift that keeps on giving. What I think he's been doing in previous months is occasionally flirting with the idea that maybe we deport people who say hostile things about us, perhaps dual national people who have criminal convictions or say that they can't stand Britain, Britain's a terrible place, or just say politically unacceptable things, and we should then be able to deport them. But he's only been sort of hinting and flirting with that idea. Now he's coming out and saying it full on, really butching up. Okay, so I want to show you what he said about 3 months ago first.
I think it's absolutely pathetic that people are still talking in these terms. It should be perfectly obvious by now, and I've said this very clearly for a long time. We have to be able to say, as countries, as Australia, France, Britain, you know, if you come here and you complain about it all the time and you don't like it and you think we're horrible and racist and you'd like to burn it down, we'd like you to leave. We don't want you here. You're not welcome. That's just not the deal. The deal is...
That's real tough guy stuff. He's really laying down the law there, isn't he? But now, 3 months later, here is Douglas Murray. I think he's talking to a mainly Jewish audience. I don't know. This might be the hall of a synagogue. I don't know. But he's become a bit of a tough guy now. This is worth watching. This video. The title: Douglas Murray treat UK Hamas supporters like ISIS supporters. Okay, it's a kind of semi-legalistic argument. It's just, I think, it's an excuse to get a bit tougher. What I want to play is what he's saying about deporting people here.
People thought that the claim that Hamas was ISIS was a rhetorical claim. We know since Saturday, if we didn't know before, it is not rhetoric, it is real. If you stand in Britain with a Hamas flag, you should not be allowed to be free in Britain. You should be arrested, have your citizenship withdrawn, your passport withdrawn. You should be deported. You should be sent to the Gaza and try your luck there.
Okay, so he's changed his tune, hasn't he? He's got a bit tough. I think this has given him permission to get tough. Incidentally, it is worth watching this just for the strangeness of it. During this video, he puts on quite a deep, slightly theatrical voice. He gets a bit emotional. His voice is quavering at times. I wonder what his motive is. Is he currying favour? I just don't know. There's another video I want to show you a little bit of in a minute. But there's a comment he makes further on here. I won't play it, but he begs. He says, "I beg you not to tolerate what has been done in Israel, the massacre and war crime that Hamas committed within Israeli territory." He's saying, "I beg you not to tolerate it," and it's almost as if the reply he's expecting from the people in the audience is, "Oh dear, oh Douglas, we really don't want to respond. Can't we just sit and take it? I mean, can't Israel just do nothing and allow it to happen?" Well, okay, since you begged us, Douglas, we'll respond. We'll send in some JDAM missiles and a ground invasion, just because you begged us. I think he's trying to show that he's even more on Israel's side than the people in the audience. That's what it looks like to me. But it doesn't matter. I think it's a good thing that civic nationalists are just getting a bit more explicit. That's, in itself, that is trivial. I think that is irrelevant, but it's a sign of a turning point, which is worth taking note of. Now this video, I think this might be a Q&A session, or this is one where he addresses the people. Well, there's some people on stage with him. If you look at their body language, they all look a bit self-contained and non-committal and as awkward as I think I would feel up there. I wonder, I can't help speculating that they're thinking, this is all slightly weird. Why is he going on like this? Why is he talking in this strange way? Why does he dye his hair like that? So anyway, there's a short quote from here that I might like to play because I think it's instructive.
The last few days. What can you do to reassure us that Israel will not be disproportionate in its response? If thousands and thousands of British girls and others had just been brutally raped and murdered, I think we would like something more than a discussion from our friends about proportionality.
Okay, so Israel has had thousands of girls raped and murdered, and wouldn't that be terrible if thousands of girls were raped and murdered in the UK? No, it's not thousands, Douglas, it's hundreds of thousands. One estimate by an MP a decade ago was 1 million. It's a lot more than that by now. Yes, and we've had a lot less than talk about proportionality. I think that is an interesting slip. So again, has he had work done there? The reason I mention the fact that he's had work done there is it adds just the whole strangeness of this talk that he's giving. And I think that strangeness is relevant because I think people behave strangely when their deep underlying beliefs are shifting, are changing. I think that's what's going on here. I think that's what's going on with him there, and that sort of confirms, that fits in with what I'm saying about this being a turning point. That people's attitudes, the flow underneath the ice, that is flowing fast. People's attitudes are changing at quite a deep level as a result of this. What is happening in the Middle East here and the reaction over here, it has crystallized some kind of change. It's made a small a hairline crack in the ice. Now, I think that change is good news. It's something to be welcomed. I don't think we should exaggerate it. I don't think we should get carried away about it. It isn't much. I don't think it's anywhere near like approaching sufficient change. I don't think the main change will be about attitudes towards the nightmare of multiculturalism. I think the main change will be about economic attitudes. And so long as the economy holds up well enough that we, pretty much all of us, can keep bending down to snort the welfare snot good and hard up our nose tubes. We're not going to interfere with politicians giving us more multiculturalism good and hard via the backdoor visa process. I think it's as bad as that. But I think the substantial change that we need, that will come when that liquidized welfare pizza no longer gets pumped through our nose tubes. And then I think we will wake up in a bad mood and we will organize ourselves and do what is necessary. But as a result of these protests and what they reveal, I think that none of us can say we haven't been warned about what is necessary. So we just need to prepare, and I think what we need to prepare for, what we're going to have to prepare for, is mass repatriation of very large foreign elements from our country, and how to do that in a reasonably humane way, as I've set out in other videos, and I'm sure I will do again. Thank you.